switch ahí atrás,
and unos salinas.
Un switch no está ahí en la orilla.
We have 2 American breed classes. Class 1, Class 2, you can go ahead and line up at the back gate if you're ready. That's Daniel Ramos and Fernando Morales.
Charlie. Charlie. La van a pagar ahorita. La van a pagar.
The lightest one weighs 1177, the heaviest 1231 in this class.
A really nice way to start off the steer show this morning. Young man Gillen calf wins for me pretty handily. In terms of balance and eye appeal, I think he does it for me the best. A really sound base kind of a calf that squares up with a lot of shape and dimension. As you get your hands to the top side of the skeleton, really a big back kind of a calf. And in this particular group, like I said, if you study it from profile, the way that one balances up just in terms of his lines and his body shape, his chest for the flank ratio, a really well-balanced calf that gives you a really good look, and he's a really sound-made one when we set him on his feet and wheels and study him going across the ring. A nice place to start off with. Young lady's blunt calf that ends up in second, a really easy-doing, soft-body kind of steer. He's really practical in his look from the profile in terms of his depth of body, but he's almost taken it a bit to the extreme for me in terms of being a lightweight steer at this particular time. One that's just a little bit stale in the way he looks down through his chest floor and his brisket right there. He's carrying a little bit too much extra condition. As we start handling this one that is really heavy finished, and that's a good thing about him to a certain degree, but it's taken away from the actual muscle and dimension that we can read down the top side of his skeleton. A really easy feed one, like I said. We need that one to be more stylish on the side and come with some more true squareness of power and shape as we study that one down the top side of his skeleton. Calf that comes in third is one that you can really appreciate, the kind of squared up shape he does with right in behind his blade over his top. Handles tremendously well in that regard. For me, it's a balance and structure issue that sets him in third awful quick for me. One that doesn't quite reach his track whenever we set the cattle in motion. He's too far forward in the angle of his blade to allow him to get his head up and balance upright, and he's a little too cut up in his flank. I think we make that one a little sounder, and he gives that second place a run for his money. A really nice way to start off the steer show. Let's give all those exhibitors a nice round of applause.
Okay, here's your places for this first class. Third, Emma Salinas. Second, Taylor Gloria. And your class winner, Eric Purcell. Now let's get class 2 into the ring here in just a minute. We'll let you know who they are when they step into the ring. All right, class 2. We should have Ganel Ramos. Her animal weighs 1337. And other animal in this class is Fernando Morales. His steer weighs 1437. And here they come.
Another really nice pair to sort through. The power calf works to the top. You want to talk about one that's tremendously big back and handles extremely well in terms of his muscle shape. When you work down the top side of that one skeleton, that's a really big back kind of a calf. It still handles really uniform and really smooth in the amount of cover and finish that he's deposited over his rib. A calf that's extremely big hipped as you get him behind him in terms of his pin placement. Really big in terms of stifle to stifle and the power that he possesses as you get him right behind him. Structurally speaking, maybe not the freest one in terms of the way he utilizes his hip and hind leg. He wants to get a bit upright every once in a while in terms of his rear pasterns and pop them. I'd like to loosen him up in that regard and set him back on his heel just a bit. From a show steer perspective, I'd sure like to see that one just a bit better there, but you've got to appreciate the kind of back shape and true red meat yield that that one possesses. I love that one's power and that one's body shape and skeletal width. Steer that comes in second, one that's certainly done his job from a feeding perspective. He's deep bodied, he's practical, he's put on enough finish to go ahead and probably grade in that high select, low choice range. One that for me, when you compare him to our first place calf, just runs out of sheer power. As you study him up top and from behind, a calf that's a little flatter and plainer in his muscle tone and texture, a calf that needs more dimension and shape, read from stifle to stifle and down into his twist as we step in behind the cattle. A really nice pair. Let's give both those kids a nice round of applause.
Okay, here's your placing. Second place, Fernando Morales, and your class winner, Ganel Ramos. And we want to pick the ABC, please. All right, so we'll bring in from class 1. Garrett Purcell, and we'll leave Janelle out there and we'll pick an ABC 3 division winner. Class 3, come forward, please.
As we get our two class winners out here, I think it's more challenging from the outside looking in. It may not be to some people, but I think there's a few give and takes on these two. And I think if you're more focused on power and body shape and just overall skill of the width and the way that one handles, that still rope cap up front certainly hard to beat. From a structural perspective, one that we talked about just a second ago, I'd sure like to see that one. I asked both the young people that are out here where they're going in terms of majors. From a longevity perspective, I'm a little bit worried about that one on his rear wheels in terms of his foot placement as we ask the cattle to travel. He wants to step outside of his body wall. He's really tight in his rear pastern, and he almost misses his step as we analyze him going across the pen. I sure wish he'd take a longer step out of the rear too. Like I said, I love that one's body shape. That one's tremendous from a muscle standpoint and just pure skill of the width. And for a power steer, sitting still, I think he still gives you a really good look from the side in terms of balance and his top line and his body shape overall. I think that puts it together as good a picture as any we're seeing out here. The calf that comes in second, one that's super pliable in terms of his body shape, that is the sounder maiden calf of the two, in my opinion, in terms of squareness and the way that he's built out of his rear skeleton. A calf that obviously has got a little bit to go in terms of getting as ready and as big as the calf that stands in front of him. And at that same time, he doesn't come with the shape up high. As we see in that front calf, he's not quite as big right behind his blade. He's not quite ready in terms of the amount of finish that he has and how he handles and the smoothness there. A calf that you gotta love him in terms of his balance and in terms of his overall soundness. I love those things about him. I wish he was bigger back and a little bit bigger body in comparison to that really powerful constructed steer up front. I'm gonna go ahead and use the silver calf for Graham. Let the yellow steer be reserved. Congratulations to both those individuals.
Okay, congratulations for Janelle Ramos. She will be your ABC Breed Division winner. And with her will be Garrett Purcell. Class 3, Julian Flores, Sofia Ballesteros, Riley Gloria, Jose Ballesteros. That is Class 3 of your BBC that is coming to the ring. Well, that's a still top 975, the lightest animal, the heaviest one 1322. Yeah, that's the only class that fits. All right, once again, class 3. I call your name, you can come into the ring. Julian Flores, Sofia Ballesteros, Riley Gloria, and Jose Ballesteros. Those are the 4 that need to come forward, please. It's a defense, guys. The lightest one weighs 975, the heaviest 1322. Just a quick reminder to our exhibitors in the back that our judge is also handling showmanship. So he's doing both, so you need to be extra careful, or extra mindful, I guess, of how you present your animal to him, because he's doing our showmanship duties for us today also.
Another very nice class to sort through. The combination calf rises to the top for me. In terms of feeding ability, in terms of muscle tone, balance, and structure, I think this one becomes the most complete in my mind. He balances up with a show steer look from the side in terms of where his head and neck sits atop his blade. He comes really good under the top side of his hip. He's a sound-made kind of a calf. When we ask the cattle to move, he still handles with plenty of mass and shape on the top side of his skeleton. And you study that one from a rear three-quarter, I think he's by far the best in terms of the shape of his forehead and his center cavity, which is what facilitates for the kind of mass that he does possess to the top side of his skeleton. A really nice, complete place to start. Young lady's calf that comes in second. Never going to be a big one, but someone was designed like that. He's designed to be a lightweight, and that's where he's at. A calf that's good in his body shape. A calf that I like the kind of mass when you get him behind him in terms of stifle to stifle. I think he's got plenty there. A calf that, for me, whenever you study the top side of this one and get your hands on him, may be the most expressive and the most squared up in terms of the shape that he carries over his top and loin. A calf, for me, that when we study in profile, falls second. From a balance perspective, I need to see that one better made to the front one-third of his skeleton in his blade and the way that he utilizes it. It's too far forward for me. He's a little jammed up in terms of his neck and the way it sits on top of there. And just again, a calf that even though he is powerful in his own right as an individual, gives up some overall mass and shape compared to our first place calf. I wish that one was just a little bit bigger in terms of his frame score. Calf that comes in third, total opposite end of the spectrum, a really large framework kind of a calf that's got a ton of extension, a ton of look working through his front end. A calf for me, when you step in behind the cattle, needs more mass. He needs more shape down to the base of his leg. He needs more to the center of his twist and the depth of that regard. A calf that just runs out of sheer power, shape, and skill to move up any higher. The calf that comes next, one that does have the advantage in comparison to our third place calf in terms of how ripped up and square the shape that he carries down his top is. A calf that, for me, is taking it to a bit of an extreme. A calf that needs more finish and needs more time to smoothen up. He handles just too raw over his rib. And a calf at the same time that I wish would just sounder off both ends of his skeleton to work up any higher. Really nice class. Let's give all those exhibitors a nice round of applause.
Thank you, Judge. Here's your placing: fourth, Julian Flores; third, Jose Ballesteros; second, Sofia Ballesteros; and your class winner, Riley Gloria. And she's also going to be your breed champion. And Sofia will be reserve breed champion. So you'll come back and compete for grand champion a little bit later on this afternoon. Give them a hand once again as they leave the ring. All right, I'll call out the names of class 4: Pablo de la Garza, Eli Barfield, Melanie Morales, Amara Lopez, and Javier Rios. If I call your name, you can start making your way to the show ring, please. Pablo de la Garza, Eli Barfield, Melanie Morales, Tamara Lopez, and Javier Rios. The lightest one weighs 1098, and the heaviest one 1232.
really interesting class to sort through, and I think there's a ton of differences in terms of type and kind. But the one that brings forth the most positives for me for just being good livestock and good cattle is his silver cap that works his way to the top. In terms of body shape, I like the kind of turn that he takes to his forehead and his center. He takes center cavity and back flank. He's really deep in that regard. A calf that reads with a ton of natural shape and mass as you read him through his quarter and his stifle. A calf that maybe when you get on top of, you wish there was just more real squared up shape right in behind his blade right there. But what sets him apart for me and why he works to the top so easy in this particular class is from soundness. And talking about soundness and feet and legs, gets to his track, he meets his track, he stays good in his top line. He doesn't deviate from pin off to ground. He stays square in that regard. And I think, like I said, that's where he separates himself from me for just being high quality cattle. He's the best in terms of his skeleton, and I think he's got enough muscle to win this particular class. The freak comes in second. You want to talk about one that's blown apart in his hip shape, super big in his pin set, a big back kind of a calf that's got a lot of natural raw shape. It's really squared up and it's firm. A calf that whenever you start analyzing him, at this point in the game, he's too raw right now. He's too lean. He's not carrying enough body for me. He needs to be softened up. And from a structural standpoint, I've got to see that one work better out of his hip and hind leg. His hip is huge. We get underneath that. He's too straight in the angle of his hock and his pastern right there. He doesn't meet his track. He's a little coarse about his blade, and I wish we could smoothen all that up and make him travel just a little bit more with more flexibility on both ends of his skeleton to beat that silver calf. Red calf that comes in third is one that does have the advantage in terms of feeding ability in comparison to that black calf. He's the softer made, softer bodied calf who's put on more cover and finish. He's smoother in that regard when you get your hands on him. He gives up too much bone work and too much natural dimension and power for me to get up any higher. He's a little flatter up behind his shoulder. He's a calf who's narrower to the top side of his hip. I love how soft he is. I wish we could put that body shape and that kind of finish and cover on that black steer, and I think that one will have a tough time being turned in this class. I just wish that calf came with more power. White calf that comes next does have that advantage. I think he's a little bit bigger back in terms of reading him over his loin and top. He's a little more squared up in that shape that he's got there. A calf that for me cuts up too much in his flank. And again, from a structural perspective, one that when we put the cattle in motion wants to duck his pins and get up underneath himself. He doesn't have enough set to his hock or enough mobility in that regard when he goes across the ring. Black calf that comes next is one that can surprise you in terms of the shape that he possesses right in behind his blade, a really squared up back kind of a calf. At the same time, when you step in behind him, he's the flattest mate in terms of his body shape. He doesn't have enough shape working to his outer leg and his lower stifle right there. A calf that just gets outpowered in this particular class and needs more body. Really tough set. Let's give all those exhibitors a nice round of applause.
Thank you, Judge. Here's your placing for this class 4. 5th place, Javier Rios. 4th, Melanie Morales. 3rd, Eli Barfield. 2nd, Pablo de la Garza. And your class winner, Tamara Lopez. Tamara and Pablo, you'll come back a little bit later on for our championship prize in this AOB class. We want to remind everybody once again we need to mask up when we're in the barn, so please put on your mask. And let's don't forget the social distancing. If you're a family and you came in together as a family, you can sit together, but let's just remember our social distancing rules that we need to adhere to. Thank you.
Very interesting top two to sort through, and I think it's so interesting because they're total opposites. In terms of where they're at their stage of development, I think they're in completely different places. The calf that wins has his future ahead of him. I think a calf that can still use some finish and some feed, some extra fat content in his diet when we get home. A calf that needs to be a little bit smoother in terms of the condition and finish he's carrying over his rib. But from a yield perspective, in terms of real red meat production, that calf's got more working to the top side of his skeleton. The squared up shape he does have, when you read that one over his loin, get in behind that calf and read true muscle shape in terms of the turn to his outer stifle and his lower leg right there. I like that calf in terms of future and reading forward better than the calf that comes in second. Like I said, I think one that needs to drop in his body, it needs to drop back in his flank in particular, but a really sound-made, good balanced calf that's got a really bright future ahead of him. The gold calf that comes next, one that's fed to the best of his ability, a super easy-doing, soft-made kind of a calf that for me has taken it to a bit of an extreme. In terms of the condition and finish he does carry, it's too much. A calf you've got to actually read through the finish and fat that he carries to the top side of his skeleton to get down and actually read that one's loin shape and his back shape. I love how he's fed out. And if you had 100 of those in a feedlot, I think you could make a serious amount of money. for a show steer, he's a little overdone for me. He's carrying too much finish. He's entirely too soft and patchy, and the finish he has created over his last rib, or his last three there. A super powerfully constructed calf, one that for me that's a little overdone at this stage of the game. And I'd like to freshen that one up and make him a bit fresher in the condition that he is carrying the top side of his skeleton. The young lady's doing a fantastic job getting that one stuck. Silver calf that comes in third fits the mold of our first place calf. In terms of his type and kind, he's got some extra look, he's got some more extension. He's a leaner design kind of a calf that reads a little bit truer down the top side of his skeleton in comparison to our second place there, where he runs out for me as if we're really analyzing structure. He's just too closed up in his lower skeleton. He's too flat in terms of his body shape, and the calf simply gets outpowered as we step in behind the cattle and read him from pin to pin and from stifle to stifle. He needs more mass in that regard. The black calf that comes next, a deep body one that can give you a practical look from the profile. A calf that for me from a balance and structure standpoint needs to be a little bit showier today to compete with the ones ahead of him. He rounds off in his hip and he's just a bit plainer in the way that he's constructed through the front 1/3 of his skeleton. A really nice balance, level maiden calf comes next. Nothing to take away from that one. A calf that for me just doesn't have enough to him at this point in terms of finish, in terms of body, in terms of back shape. He needs more power. He needs more time on feed to kind of smoothen up and put on more finish and give him a more mature look to his body shape to work up any higher. Really competitive class all the way through. Let's give those young kids a nice round of applause.
Here we go. Thank you, Judge. Here's your placing. Fifth place, Jose Negrete. Fourth, Everett Longoria. Third, Javier De Leon. Second, Gabriela Kelly. And your first place from this class 5 is Ricardo Rodriguez. Ricardo and Kelly, you'll come back later on this afternoon, and we'll compete for our AOB Greek Championship drive. Class 6, I'm going to call out for names. If you hear your name, you can come forward. Leilani Martinez, Eric Tovar, Ivan Rodriguez, Fatima de la Peña, and Osvaldo Rodriguez. That is the 5 students that will make up class number 6. The lightest one weighs 1342. And the heaviest one, 1421. This is class 6 of our 8 OBs. Again, Leilani Martinez, Eric Tovar, Ivan Rodriguez, Fatima de la Peña, and Osvaldo Rodriguez. That is the 5 students.
Well, certainly the toughest top pair that we've seen all day. I think both these cattle look extremely good. That last look set it in stone for me. The silver calf's much better on his feet and legs, in my opinion. Get right in behind him and read how square that one is from pinnock to ground. He stays within his body cavity as he goes away from him. He's a calf that, for me, reads more youthful and reads more attractive from the profile while still being a really big back kind of a calf who's really uniform in the finish that he's put on. Super consistent in the way he handles over his 12th and 13th rib right there. A calf that's certainly converted feet to the best of his ability and is going to be one that can grade in that choice grade for me. A calf that whenever you start studying body shapes is really good in that regard. He's opened up in his lower skeleton, yet still remains square. He's bold in his body shape, yet one that still handles really smooth, like I said, down the top side of his skeleton. And for me, between the two power calves, that one takes the cake in terms of skeletal quality and in terms of balance. I think he does the best of those in both those regards. I think he's by far the best. A really nice show to start off with. There ain't nothing taken away from that yellow calf. That's a big-footed man-child. That one's super stout-featured, really stout skull, a big muscle kind of a calf who's got a tremendous amount of natural dimension and product working from end to end. A calf for me that when we set him in motion has got to be better built out of his rear skeleton. He wants to step outside of himself. He doesn't know where to kind of plant that foot. Sometimes he'll roll it in, sometimes he'll roll that hockey out. I just wish he was more stable in that regard and where built out of his rear skeleton to move up any higher. Love his power, love his bone work. That calf's got to be better built and more mobile, in my opinion, to work up any higher. The calf that rolls in third, one that fits the mold of our second place just in terms of being a deep-bodied, practical mated one that's easy feeding. He's put on a consistent amount of finish over his 12th and 13th. I love him for that. A calf, for me, from a balance and structure perspective, falls in third pretty quickly. He's too bold and coarse about the way his blade plays into his body cavity, and the transition from there into his foreribs just a bit harsh because that accentuates it. A calf that, for me, when you start analyzing his rear wheels, one that wants to roll out of his hip and get up underneath himself when we ask the cattle to travel. The silver calf that comes next, one that's really raw to the top side of his skeleton. I like how square and shapely he is in terms of the power he possesses in that regard. A calf for me that's just not there today. He's not at 12 o'clock. A calf that needs more time on feed to be more massive in comparison to the top three, as well as just put on more finish to be smoother and have a more mature look to him. The white calf that comes next, a calf that does have the advantage in that regard in comparison to the calf that sits ahead of him, is the easier feeding of the two, is a little bit deeper and softer through his center body and back into his flank. As you step on top of the cattle and right in behind him, a calf that just needs to be more explosive and bolder in terms of his body shape. He runs out of shape to the top side of his skeleton in terms of the squareness right in behind his blade, and I need to see some more power as we get in behind the cattle. A really nice top 5 calves all the way through. Let's give those kids a nice round of applause.
Thank you, Judge. Here's your placing for this class number 6. 5th place, Derek Boab. 4th, Ivan Rodriguez. 3rd, Fatima de la Peña. 2nd, Leilani Martinez. And your class winner, Osvaldo Rodriguez. Osvaldo and Leilani will come back in a little bit and compete for AOB Breed Championship Drive. Class 7 of our AOB heavyweight. We should have Jorge Castillo, Jose Jimenez, Nina Mata, Karina Negrete, Evan Longoria, and Lucas Salinas. The lightest one weighs 1431, and the heaviest one 1520. That's a lot of hamburgers. We'll bring them into the ring here as soon as we can get them lined up. And we'll judge this last class of AOB. You should have 6. After we judge this class, we'll bring all the AOBs from 4, 5, and 6, I believe. And we'll have a AOB division championship drive. Then we'll pick a grand champion for the 2021 Maverick County Junior Livestock Show. We'll have our championship drive coming up in just a little bit. go get you a picture taken, you guys that have already been in the ring. Don't forget to go there to Mr. Reese's the photo booth set up over there where we can get the picture. Those are the photos we'll use for our auction tomorrow, so please go by and make sure you get the photo taken.
A really nice way to start off this particular class. I think that's a show steer that puts together a lot of power, a lot of completeness from the side, and balance and look, and yet can still get around the ring and move with a lot of flex and comfort off both ends of his skeleton. He's really big in terms of the shape that he takes. As you suck in profile and read him through his lower leg right there, and where he supersedes for me is that one just handles the part. He's super good to the touch. His skin is really good. A calf that really squares up with a lot of dimension and shape right in behind his blade. He's super fresh over his loin. He's really good in terms of his lower body shape. I like that one's turn and crease that he's got there. A really wide base kind of steer. Like I said, still handles all that power and skeletal width on a really nice set of feet and legs. Young man's calf that comes in second. You want to talk about one that's extra wide over his loin and really big in his pin set and a big footed kind of a steer. There's one for you. A calf for me where he falls in second relatively quickly as we get from his center body forward. He's just a little bit too coarse the way his blade lays into his cavity. The transition from there into his heart is just a little bit harsh because his blade is a little bit further out. A calf that I wish came with the same kind of topside dimension as we read in front of his loin. Like our class winner, it needs to be squared up in that regard, and it needs to just have more. And I wish that calf went out and traveled the ring like our class winner in terms of the way he utilizes hip and hind legs. He's kind of got the same problem our second place from the last class has. He wants to step outside of his body wall, get rounder out of his hip, and not take quite as long of a step. I wish he had those things, and I think he runs with it first place pretty easy. Calf that's in third has a really bright future ahead of him. Another calf that's really well presented. A calf that's really good in terms of his hair coat and in terms of his skin. He handles extremely well. He's a lighter weight calf with a top two, and in regards to that, he just comes a little raw today. A calf that needs some more time and needs some more feed to gain the extra mass to the top two. A calf that's still just a little bit raw in the shape that he contains down the top side of his skeleton. I like how squared and shape up it is. It needs to be softer, it needs to be a little bit mellower handling to be a more mature show steer at this point in time. Calf that comes next, really long, really extended, a super level constructed kind of a steer. One that from the side profile can give you a deep body productive kind of a look. As we step right on a rear 3/4 view, a calf that of the initial four is a little bit flatter and narrower in terms of his body shape, in terms of his skeletal width. He just needs to be expanded in those two areas, work up any higher to have some more mass. Silver and white mated calf, another one that's really lean, designed in a high cutability kind of a steer. He's got a lot of natural raw shape working from end to end. A calf for me that's kind of got the same problem as this calf over here, one that's not quite done today. A calf that needs more fat, a calf that needs to be smoother handling and mellower to the touch, just to be more massive and to see that one will grade a little bit better at his end point. Yellow calf that rounds out the class, nothing to take away from that one. A really high growthy kind of a calf that's got a lot of growth power in him. I like how big footed he is. A calf that for me from a show steer perspective needs to be a little bit better balanced from the side. And his hip and his hind leg construction, I wish it was a little longer and a little leveler. I'd like to take him and blow him part of the top side of his hip and just maybe reconstruct him in terms of the way he's built out of his front end to make him a little bit better balanced from the side. A really tough class from top to bottom. Let's give all those kids a nice round of applause.
Thank you, judges. You're placing for this class 7, 6th place, Lucas Salinas. 5th, Karina Negrete. 4th, Jorge Castillo. 3rd, Jose Jimenez. 2nd, Evan Longoria. And your class winner, Nina Mata. Nina Mata is your class winner. Let's go ahead and keep Evan and Nina in the ring. And from class 6, we need Osvaldo Rodriguez and Leilani Martinez. Class 5, Gabriela Kelly was 2nd place, and Ricardo Rodriguez, your class winner from class 5. And from class 4, we need Pablo de la Garza and Tamara Lopez. Get all the first place animals lined up on one side. We'll put the second one behind them. Once again, from class 4, Tamara Lopez. Class 5, Ricardo Rodriguez. Class 6, Osvaldo Rodriguez. And in class 7, Nina Mata. He's there already. And like we have in the past couple of years, the seniors here, Showmanship, will receive a scholarship from the Molina family and their contributions that they've made to us for the last couple of years, recognizing our senior Showmanship participants and exhibitors. So we thank the Molinas for their great work and all the hard work they do in helping our kids, and also for putting the scholarship together for our senior Showmanship exhibitors. Tamara Lopez from class 4, her animal weighs 1194. Class 5, Ricardo Rodriguez. This animal weighs 1291. From Class 6, Osvaldo Rodriguez. This animal weighs 1421. And from Class 7, Nina Mata. Hers animal weighs 1435. These are our class winners in this AOB breed division. And will our judge look them over and he'll select the champion from this breed. Champion in reserve.
Well, I think it's a very close decision out here. I think there's two that hit me awfully well in terms of type and kind that I like as an individual. I think there's two that do a very good job at checking off some boxes for me in terms of priorities. I think they're both cattle that are good in terms of their body shape, number one. They're really big back kind of cattle. They've been finished out awfully well. They're smooth and consistent in terms of the amount of finish that they do carry, especially over their 12th and 13th, and they're not patchy in that regard. And I think they're both good enough on their feet and legs for show steers in this day and age. Overall, I think both are really good cattle. I think it gets really interesting in sorting them, just to be nitpicky. I think there's one that comes a little bit better in terms of his body shape, and in terms of where he's at maturity-wise, I think he's just there today. I think another one maybe has a really bright future. Don't know where these cattle are going by any means, but there's one for me today that kind of hits 12 o'clock in terms of his body shape, in terms of his consistency of finish and muscle tone. I think there's one that's awfully good and balanced off awfully well. Takes a really neat picture. The young man with the silver cap right here is going to have champion. Congratulations to him. We're going to go ahead and bring in the second place from that class and reevaluate, and then I'll pick your reserve.
Leilani Martinez from Class 6. The grand champion, Osvaldo Rodriguez. Osvaldo, bring your steer over here. Get him out of the way. We'll clap for him in a minute. From Class 6, Leilani Martinez, her steer weighs 1342.
Bring that second place out, and I think that's another really good calf in his own right. In some spots, like I said in class, I think that one's a big-footed man-child in terms of power and in terms of body shape. And then there's some things that I like to change about him from a structural perspective, from a freshness perspective. He'd look a little bit old and crusty about his head and neck, and a calf that I wish just was more mobile and just more secure and square in the way that he was built out of his rear too, and his hip construction there. I think we fixed those things, and it moves him up significantly. But with that said, I think there's one that does just a little bit better job in terms of freshness and feet and legs. The young lady right here is going to have reserve. Congratulations to her.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Let's give our judge a hand. He did a great job with our steer show today. Mr. Morris, Wayne Morris is back with us again, and we thank you. Nina Mata will be your reserve grand champion for the 2021 stock show. Oh. I'm sorry, this is Breed.
No.
I'm getting ahead of myself, ain't I? All right, now we're going to bring in our champion. Okay, from Class 1, we need Janelle Ramos. From Class 2, Janelle Ramos. From Class 3, Riley Gloria. then from class 6, Osvaldo Rodriguez. Those are your 3 that will compete for a grand champion. From the ABC, we should have Renel Ramos and Garrett Purcell. From the BBCs, Riley Gloria and Sofia Ballesteros. And from the AOBs, Osvaldo Rodriguez and Nina Mata. Get all the first place animals on one side and the second one on the other.
Well, I appreciate y'all letting me come out again. This will be the 3rd road that I'm here. Usually I'm in the sheep and goat. But it certainly was a pleasure to come out here and sort through these steers. And more importantly, thank y'all for letting me work with the youth of this county. A really great set of kids, all doing a fantastic job. Even if you're not in this ring at this particular time, doing a very good job throughout this entire county. I applaud y'all for that, raising a heck of a set of the kids. Really high quality steer show. Numbers aren't the biggest, but I tell you what, it sure is deep just in terms of quality. And I think there's several out here that hit me awfully hard. I think there's 2 that become the most complete in terms of combining their power, body shape, skeletal width, and putting it on a good set of feet and legs. The 2 exotics are going to be champion in reserve. Congratulations to those 2 kids.
Osvaldo Rodriguez, your grand champion, Jeff, the boy. And then Janelle Ramos will be your reserve champion for our 2021 start. So give them all. No? Wait. Nina. Huh? Nina. Okay. All right, y'all listen up. Our showmanship winners for this year, in this year division, our senior showmanship is Janelle Ramos. And your junior showmanship winner is Leilani Martinez. Give him a hand. Yeah, come and get your buckles, guys. Your breed division winners. We got them up here at the announcer stand. But our grand champion once again, Osvaldo Rodriguez. And your reserve champion is Nina Mata. And that's it, folks. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you to all our exhibitors and all the helpers in the back for helping make this run a good show. Thanks again to our judge. Put our hands together for him, please, and thank you for being with us once again and helping our kids out here at the show barn today. We've had a good week, folks. Thank you all for being with us. Tomorrow is our sale, and it's going to be virtual. So please log in if you haven't got the information on where you can see our sale online. We've got the information that'll be posted probably on our Facebook page and all that other stuff. So please, if you haven't signed up to be a buyer, I think the deadline was today. Sometime during the day you have to register 24 hours ahead of time to be a buyer on the online portion of our sale. We wish all these kiddos good luck tomorrow as we get ready to have our big sale. Thank you for being with us. Everybody continue staying safe. Work on getting the vaccine if you can get it, and we'll be all protected, and hopefully next year we can come together and have a good old time like we're used to having here at the show barn. The judge was mentioning a little bit a while ago before we started that it felt kind of strange to be in here without the crowd and the energy and just the ambiance of having a barn full of people, but we all know we're living in very different circumstances right now, and we all need to protect ourselves and keep each other safe. So we thank, hopefully we were able to do that this week. We've got this thing pulled off, and we'll continue working to get each other protected. So thanks again. Everybody, good luck, stay safe, and we'll see y'all next time.